Welcome to the Don't Pick the Scab podcast with the premise of connecting men over 40 with the tools and community to thrive in their divorce recovery either before, during, or after a divorce. Welcome out there, everyone, to Don't Pick the Scab podcast. Today's guest is Justin Sunseri, a therapist and coach who's been helping people heal and rebuild since 2007. Justin's passion in making mental health clear and practical, moving away from abstract psychobabble and real-life tools that work. He specializes in trauma recovery, substance use, relationship issues, and self-harm. He's committed to showing men over 40 that you're not broken, maybe just stuck. Justin is especially known for teaching polyvagal theory in simple, actionable ways, helping men feel safe in their bodies and more present in their lives. He's a dedicated father of two, loving husband, and a coffee enthusiast who loves Swiss design. The 49ers Chiefs fan, and a good side
God. You broke my silence there. That's crushing, dude. You held on to that one. You knew I was coming on. You held on to that one. Oh.
Justin's mission is to change the way the world understands mental health and empower men to finally release inner pain and find emotional freedom. Justin, welcome to Don't Pick the Scab podcast.
I feel overall very welcome. I appreciate it. Wow, that was a blow right there.
I saved that one too, man. I saved it for the very...
You knew.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I did not see that. Blindsided. Did not see that coming at all.
Oh, I feel so much better right now.
That's what I get for flaking on you. Was it last week? That's what I get.
Being here last week. Yeah, there you go. So what about you, Justin? What's your deal? Talk to us.
That was a good rundown of it. Yeah, I like that you included that I'm dedicated to helping out men. I mean, I want to help anybody out, but I do get a little something different out of like when a guy comes to therapy or reaches out to me. It's actually today I met with someone for the first time who's, I think he's like 30. So he's a bit younger, but you know, and so to have someone reach out and say like, look, I don't talk about this stuff. I don't know how to do this. I've never tried to. And so to see him feel comfortable with me and talk, like there's something about that is like kind of fulfilling, you know?
Yeah.
Beyond that, I love being a therapist. I think what I do differently is, you mentioned the no-psychobabble thing. I don't do things, I think I do things very differently. So I don't do like parts work, shadow, ego. To me, it's like there's you in the present moment, and there's so much there that we can work with. So that's my focus, is like, how do we reduce the mental clutter as much as possible and really focus on what's happening internally in the present moment.
What inspired you to become a therapist and coach, especially for men navigating trauma and divorce?
So as big I was art major originally. I went to junior college out of high school, and I had drawn my whole life, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to be an artist. So I went to I started majoring in art, and I realized I could not stand doing what the teacher told me to. I like to do my own thing. And I figured I probably can't make a living off of this if I can't follow what the teacher tells me. So I had also had a second interest or passion at that time, which was, I was kind of interested in psychology. I remember in high school, I had taught myself how to hypnotize my friends. And so we would just be, well, not just like, not out of nowhere, I had their consent and everything, but we'd hang out, you know, after school or whatever. And I'd say, hey, can I practice this on you? And they'd let me. And it was a blast. So something about psychology just always kind of pulled at me. So when I decided not to be a artist, I asked the guidance counselor, I'm like, hey, what's that thing where you sit down and like talk with people one-on-one? And she said, counselor, psychologist, you know, therapist. I'm like, yeah, that. How do I do that? And that just kind of led me ultimately to where I'm at. There's just, I don't know, there's something about it that I'm sure we could trace this back to my own like childhood and whatnot. But
there you go.
Of course, it always comes back to it. But like, there's something I get out of it. I love, even when just doing the podcast, like when people reach out and say, hey, this was helpful, there's something about it that lights me up. I love it. And for the longest time, I worked with teenagers, and then I went to private practice. And because I've worked in juvenile halls, I worked in public schools, I've worked with addiction, a lot of it with teenagers, and families. I love working with families. And with all that experience, a lot of what was missing was working with men. And so I'm not specifically targeting, you know, working with men, but again, like when men reach out to me and want to work together, it's pretty fulfilling. It's like, it's okay to, you know, talk about your feelings, and it's not that scary, and we can have a good time. We can smile about it, and we can laugh, and like it's just chatting, but I'm gonna guide you into something a little bit more depth, but it's very approachable. It's very doable.
Why do you think men have a hard time reaching out for therapy? Maybe it's, we're men.
Yeah,
What is the deal with men?
I think it's the kind of the obvious answer, right? Like we're not who out of who's raised to like talk about your emotions. I think that's probably even more relevant for men. Like we're not really taught to do so. That's kind of the obvious answer, I think. Um, growing up, we don't really seek. I don't think we seek the same kind of validation from our friends as far as like emotional validation. We typically, I don't think, go to our friends and like talk about who said what and how we feel about it and what we're afraid of. Like we don't do that thing. I'm sure it has a lot to do with machismo and of course. So like that's deeply ingrained in us. And so if we don't learn those skills early on, how to identify how we feel, how to self-regulate our emotions, if we don't learn and practice that early on, it just keeps going and it has these negative effects in all areas of life. That the person I talked to today didn't learn those things. And so now he's dealing with alcohol use and he's dealing with his wife saying like, you need help. And he's dealing with all kinds of stuff. And it really is driven by this emotional piece of himself that he has not attended to whatsoever.
Okay.
I think that is kind of unique to men, but honestly, it's the same for the women I meet with. I think women are more likely to talk about their emotions, but I hope no one, well, I think your audience is mostly men, right? So women are more likely to talk about their emotions, but that doesn't mean that they're effective at it. That doesn't mean that they're actually effective at noticing what's happening within them and tolerating it and welcoming it with compassion. So I think those kind of core self-regulation skills, uh, cross-culturally, cross-gender, we don't really get those. I mean, it just that seems to be a constant. How women internalize that, how men internalize that, that might be a little different, but there are some like really core emotional regulation things that we simply don't get. I think kind of globally, in all honesty.
Well, can you explain the polyvagal theory in the simplest terms for our listeners?
Yeah,
Because we're
yeah.
men.
This is what I think. This is actually. I think this appeals to everyone. I think the majority of my audience is women, and they like this too. But I like this a lot. The way I think is very engineering kind of. Even though I'm a therapist, I approach problems or I approach emotions as it's a problem. We can figure this out. There's a point A, there's a point B,
Mm.
there's a point C. We can track this stuff. And so the polyvagal theory, it fit in perfectly with kind of the way I think and the way that I treat people. But the theory is basically the absolute basic idea is that human beings as mammals can exist in a state of safety or of danger. That is the absolute bare bones of it. When we're in a safety state, we can do things like look at each other and make eye contact. We can hug, we can smile, we can laugh, we can play, be creative, problem solve. All these come from being in a state of, our body has to be in a state of safety. And there's literally like, it's not a choice. We don't really choose those things. Once we have our safety state active, there's biological pathways responsible for that. Then we can unlock all those wonderful positive skills. But when we're not safe, then the body shifts
Okay.
predictably into a danger state. And then you've probably heard of like flight, fight, freeze. I mean, that's kind of the idea. So there's flight and fight, which is running away and being aggressive. But there's also another one called shutdown, and that's where we collapse, where we're basically playing dead. That's the evolutionary benefit of it. But day to day, it looks like depression. Flight looks like anxiety. Fight looks like anger and aggression. And then freeze would be like panic, rage, overwhelm. So these basically the theory says our body has these biological states driven by these pathways connected to our brainstem. It's not a choice to like we can't turn these things off and on at will, but we could definitely influence it, but we can't just choose. But that's the basic idea. And so whatever state that you're in directly affects your behaviors, your thoughts, your emotions, your sensations inside your body, the impulses you have. All of those things come from the state of your body.
What are some of the common ways trauma shows up for men after a divorce? And why do so many men over 40 feel broken after divorce? And what do you say to them?
Actually, I kind of like want to hear from you as well, like to help fill in the pieces here, because I think it can show up in so many different ways.
Yep.
And there's not just like I'm not divorced, so I maybe I can't specifically relate to this, but the divorce may be traumatic in and of itself, but there's likely things. It doesn't come out of nowhere, right? So there's likely things leading to the divorce. There's already issues in the relationship, right? So there may be years, maybe decades worth of issues between someone and their spouse, right? But even before that, there's potentially a lifetime worth of emotional, just, not checking in with our emotions, not feeling them, not talking about them, not regulating. So it's not just like the divorce. There's probably this buildup of stuff throughout life, but also in the marriage, and then which culminates in the divorce. And then once the divorce happens, my assumption would be that there's like alone. You're alone now,
Yep.
and being alone is, and especially cut off from your kids. I would, if there's kids in the equation, like that is extremely difficult. So if someone has this like dysregulated state, maybe they're in flight, fight, or shutdown or freeze chronically throughout life, maybe, or throughout the marriage, and then they get a divorce, like that might have, maybe there's a reason for that, obviously, but now they still have the issues. They still have those, the flight, fight. They still have the freeze or the shutdown. And now they're alone,
Mhm.
which is like kind of the worst thing to heal from trauma, to heal to get out of these, because we can get stuck in these defensive states. That's what trauma is. To get out of a traumatized state, we kind of need to have safe others. That's a pretty big part of healing. There's more to it, but like that's a key piece of it.
It
So
uh,
if we're now in isolation, that's like a huge obstacle toward coming out of that traumatized state. Plus all the things that come after, the constant stresses of money and childcare, a place to live, all of those pieces just contribute and layer on to the history of whatever that person was already going through.
yeah, I think some of the trauma manifestations are, drinking, drugs, and let's talk about the ones that aren't obvious, like dating too soon and end up with someone like your ex. That happened to me. Lashing out, taking it out on your co-parenting skills with your kids. There's all
Sure.
sorts of trauma that it shows up.
Well, let me compartmentalize this. So what you're discussing is the behaviors,
Yep.
what a guy does based
Okay.
on, so someone who's, let's say, like more in like a shutdown state. Shutdown is a limp collapse. It's like playing dead so that a predator will think that you're a corpse and walk by, right? Now, no guy is probably literally doing that when they get a
Yep.
divorce, but their biology may be in that state, even though they can go to work and maybe still have, friends. Chronically, day to day, they may live in this underlying state of shutdown. Like mentally, emotionally, they're very detached. They are lethargic. Maybe they're just drained of energy. They're feeling pretty hopeless. All that comes from shutdown. So that's the biology, but that we'll call that the trauma. You're stuck in shutdown. The behavior, the action of it is, now what does that individual do from their shutdown state? So someone who's in shutdown is probably more likely to isolate in their home all by themselves and maybe even not show up to that, their kids, sporting event, because it's just like, well, what's the point? I'm worthless and I don't even have the energy for this. I'm overwhelmed with work and with life. And so the behavior isn't the trauma or the response. The
Okay.
response is shutdown, and then it shows up as maybe isolation or checking out of life.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So you say stuck, not broken. What does
Yeah.
that mean in your practice?
I haven't, I've always had this issue with, even before learning the polyvagal stuff, I've had this issue with the mental health world where we look at someone who shows up and is looking for help. We look at them and say, you're different. You're depressed. You're fill in the blank. You have this illness, quote unquote illness. I've always had an issue with that. I just personally don't look at things that way. It doesn't make sense to me, because I can have someone come in to meet with me, and let's say someone was diabetic and they came in to meet with me. They're still diabetic,
Hmm.
right? Whether or not they talk to me, they're still diabetic. They can show up and talk to me and they're still diabetic. They'll leave diabetic. But someone who's depressed can show up and all of a sudden for that hour, they're not depressed. They're smiling, they're laughing with me, they're motivated to complete tasks. So for some reason in that moment, all of a sudden that quote unquote illness is not there. Kids that that would meet with me that have their parents would bring them in that were diagnosed with ADHD. All of a sudden, when they're meeting with me, they can sit and play with toys and talk to me just fine. And they're not. I would never look at them and say, you have ADHD or whatever that means at this point. I'm not even sure. But when they leave and they're in class or they're at home, their behaviors are different. So to me, it never made sense that like, why would the behaviors leave in some contexts and then not in other contexts? Like that doesn't make sense if it's an illness, you know what I mean? So that's to couch the next piece here. So I've always understood people coming in and out and trying to get help as like, you're just kind of stuck. You know, like you want to achieve more life satisfaction, but damn it, this like depression or this heaviness, this lethargy, this weight that you're carrying around with you, you're kind of stuck in that. But in some contexts, like when you come in and meet with me or when you go into a like camping with friends in a forest, all of a sudden you're not depressed. I met with a girl, 11-year-old, who had like severe panic attacks, but in the forest, she didn't. It's like, well, what's going on here? So for some, the majority of your day-to-day existence, you're stuck, but then in some context or with some people, you're not. So that's why, to me, it's like, there's still the momentum to go forward, to meet a life goal, to make change, but there's just like there's a wall for some reason. I wouldn't call that a mental illness. To me, I call that stuckness. Mm-hmm. And once we can deal with the wall, then you just kind of keep going forward. You can meet the goals. And all of a sudden it's like, well, why would I call you depressed? Because you no longer, this wall's not in front of you anymore. And now things are different, you know? So I've always seen my clients be able to make progress out of whatever their state is.
What are some of the small daily practices that can help men move forward in their divorce recovery?
Let's look at this two different ways. Someone who's in a traumatized kind of state, whether that's caused by the divorce or exacerbated by the divorce, they have some level of defensive activation that might be, or it is too much, whether that's flight, fight, shutdown, or freeze. So one angle to go about this is, how can we reduce the defensive activation? And the other angle is, how do we increase feelings of safety? So reducing defensive activation might be like they're going through the divorce, all these new responsibilities, financial considerations, and they have to go to work. And so after work, they're feeling overwhelmed. They're just beaten, like they're just done. So how do we reduce the amount of overwhelm they're going through? One thing that's been my clients like to do, I'll brainstorm with them, like, how do we reduce your defensive activation? And one thing that's kind of common is when you get home, or maybe as soon as you leave work and you get in your car, can you spend 1 minute in silence and just give yourself permission to have your feelings? And what's weird is that seems scary or weird because it's like, I don't want to feel this way. Why would I pay attention to it? The reality is you feel that way anyways, whether you pay attention to it or not. And you've probably successfully ignored this feeling. And I say success, but really it's like, it's still there and it's probably worsening. And now your options are kind of running out. So it's still there. So instead of ignoring it or fighting it, what if you just paid attention to it for a minute and took a couple of breaths and just sat in silence and gave yourself permission to feel the way you feel? And then after a minute, that's it. Now drive home. Or what if you did that right before you before you walked into your doorway? So that is basically like, let's just give it permission to exist. You feel that way anyways, instead of masking it with like alcohol or doom scrolling or watching, binge watching Netflix. Instead of doing that, what if you gave your feelings permission to exist and actually paid attention to them at least a little bit, just for a minute? What I consistently find is that even though it's a scary idea, people will consistently say, like, paying attention to it actually helped it just kind of calm down. The intensity of it just softens. It doesn't make it go away, but it softens it. It makes it manageable. And so now, instead of like turning toward that drink to feel better, if I can make it manageable, it's like the drink may not be as appealing. I can hang out with my feelings, and now I'm ready to like watch Netflix or something like that. But I don't need to have that drink. I don't need to do that thing, reach out to my ex to feel better. I can just, it's there, but it's softened. So that's like one avenue, I think, is how do we soften the defensive activation? And really comes down to paying attention to it. It's not an easy skill, but it is manageable, especially like in a small increment, like a minute. Mm-hmm. The other avenue would be, how do we increase feelings of safety? And really this comes down to how do we increase positive feelings. This does not come down to, I'm not saying like think positive thoughts. I'm not saying, because that's very fake, I think, to like try to force positive thoughts. If you don't have positive thoughts, you don't have positive thoughts. I think it's kind of crazy making to try to inject these thoughts into your brain.
Okay.
Yeah. The way I work is different. I think a lot of therapists or people in this realm will say like, well, it's the problem is your thinking. The problem's not your thinking. Your thoughts are a result of your state. If you're in a shutdown state, you can't choose your thoughts. Your thoughts will be more pessimistic. It follows the state of your body. If you're in a fight activation, your thoughts are going to be way more blaming and shaming. It's somebody else. It's their fault. They did it. If you're in flight activation, your thoughts are going to be more like, it's not I didn't do it. Wasn't me. Don't look at me. It's like you don't choose that. It comes from the state of your body. So the other avenue here is increasing. How do we increase safety? This can come down to really big, obvious things. Like when I talked to that guy today, he likes to go hunting. When he's hunting, it's quiet. He has a buddy there with him. He doesn't drink. He doesn't do anything that like no doom scrolling. He's okay with the solitude and the quiet, the peaceful, the nature, the hearing the natural sounds. That's a really big, obvious thing. I don't expect people to go into nature every time to feel, but can you, on the way in from when you get home and you're walking to your front door, can you literally stop and smell the flowers for 30 seconds? Can you literally stop and put your hand on a tree and feel the bark? Can you, when you get out of the car, can you look up at the sky and notice what kind of clouds are there? I know it sounds corny, but these little pieces of nature are extremely healing. And so that can kind of boost. It gives you a little bit of maybe a calm or a slight sense of peace or tranquility or being present. So if we could do that 30 seconds once a day, I think it's a heck of a lot better than nothing. But it reminds your body like we're safe. We know how to feel this way. And if you can do that, then you can start to kind of build your body's safety capacity. Okay. And if you can build safety, then the defensive activation actually starts to soften more.
What role does the body play in mental health, and why has psychology neglected this?
It's everything. I believe it's everything. If you can get the state of your body to change, everything else changes. If you can get your body to feel a bit safer, your thoughts change, your emotions change. What you do changes. If you are in a state of safety and you feel, let's say, just connected to the present moment, maybe you're outside and looking up at the sky and noticing, trees swaying in the breeze. I know it sounds corny, but like, it's just that simple. So if you can do something like that, in that little moment where you feel present and you feel, I would call it safe, your body, the state of your body is in a state of safety. So your ventral vagal pathways are active, basically. So in that state, and during that moment, you naturally have more empathy. You naturally are less likely to do something that's more of like a self-harm kind of thing, like drinking to excess or calling someone you're going to regret. In that little moment, when you have more safety active, you're more likely to treat your emotions seriously. You don't choose these things. It naturally comes. Once your body's in that state, these things naturally come. Okay? You don't choose it. It's not a hack. It's like, it's just, we have, I'm not saying it's easy, but when we get to that state of the body, then those things come. So why has psychology neglected this? I think part of it is it's just no longer a part of our innate knowledge. I believe that this knowledge we're in a sense born with, but we lose it. We lose it. It is socialized out of us through numerous levels. So it's not something that's fostered. Our parents did not know how to do this. No one does. Hopefully we learn this and can pass. I feel like I'm passing it on to my kids now, but it's not fostered. It's not developed. And so instead we rely on things to make us feel kind of better, like telling ourselves when we're sad, instead of just feeling sad and giving ourselves permission to feel sad, we do something like, no, I got to be strong. We puff our chest out and we go focus on something else. So that's kind of useful to get through the day, sure, but it does not develop emotional regulation. So I think part of the problem when it comes to psychology is we just don't know this stuff anymore. And so a therapist or a psychologist, they're not looking for it. And they have no idea how to teach this to their clients or how to walk them through really simplified self-regulation. I think it's part of the problem. The other part is that there's probably more money to be made through some sort of hack versus teaching someone the I think there's not much incentive in my belief.
It's almost like working out.
Oh yeah.
You're doing like, what I'm hearing is you're doing like little mini shocks to your body, giving it some positivity.
Mhm.
And these little positivities like add up over time.
Yeah. That's exactly right. It is. It's like any other skill, and working out is a really good example. But it's like anything else. It's like podcasting. You get better and better over time, right? Hopefully, it's like hitting a baseball. At first, we have no idea what to do,
Yep.
but we take a baby step forward with a tee, right? T-ball. So I don't expect a client of mine to know how to feel safety right off the bat. I don't expect them to like deeply connect with their safety state and then to welcome uncomfortable emotions. That's a very difficult skill, but I can definitely give them a tee and a wiffle ball and wiffle bat, right? Oversized one,
Yep. Heck
and just
yeah.
say, do it for 30 seconds. Can for 30 seconds, can you look up at the sky before you go in the house? That's a tee-ball, right? But if you could do that, cool. Well, now can you do it with a bat that's a smaller size, maybe for a minute,
Mhm.
the analogy. And if you could do that, great. Can you now be mindful in your car for 1 minute in silence and notice what's happening inside of you? Notice
Those
your
are baby
emotions.
steps.
Exactly. Baby steps. And this accumulation leads to the body, it remembers. And literally, as you practice safety, there's like I mentioned before, the ventral vagal pathway. No one has to memorize this, but that pathway strengthens. It literally strengthens. So your analogy, your metaphor of working out is perfect. It
Mhm.
literally is the same thing. The more time you spend doing this, it strengthens those pathways. As those pathways strengthen, all of a sudden, feelings like depression and anxiety and panic, they get lower and lower and lower. They soften. And our ability to welcome them and feel them goes up and up and up.
Mhm.
It's a direct correlation.
How can understanding your triggers help you regain emotional control? Because triggers are big in divorce recovery. It could
Yeah.
be a song, it could be a smell, it could be almost anything at this point. And years later,
Yeah, no, totally. So let's frame what triggers are and what's happening, okay? Triggers are, well, I mean, it triggers the body and mind into a different state, really. So if someone is walking around with, lingering defensive activation, it's always kind of in their system, okay? It's always kind of there, just kind of waiting to either be compassionately felt or to be triggered. So it's just kind of there. And then once that song comes on, that lingering activation is like, boom, here I am. You call, here I am, So when we're triggered, it's this external cue or maybe a memory, an internal cue. When we're triggered, it's literally activating a state of the body that is from the past. And I think the stereotypical, like, veteran coming back from war and there's a car backfiring, although
yeah,
that metaphor is going to lose significance as more and more electric cars are out there. But, that's the stereotypical kind of example, right? So that loud bang is not just like what's happening isn't they hear a bang and then they remember being in a situation and then they react behaviorally. That's the wrong sequence. What's happening is there's the loud bang, or in the divorce case, there's the piece of music. There's a loud bang, which goes in through the ears, goes into the brainstem. The brainstem associates this bang with rightfully danger. So in the divorced person's case, it goes in through the ear, goes to the brainstem. The brainstem associates that song with some sort of danger or some sort of longing, missing. It activates a state of the body. The body fundamentally shifts state, and then our thoughts go to I miss this person or that memory of that thing. So the thoughts are kind of a tertiary. It comes after the body changes state, which comes after the brainstem decides or shifts state, which comes after the external trigger. Does that make sense?
yeah, that's a whole lot going like in nanoseconds.
It really is.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like, we're talking about, chemical reactions,
yeah.
axons and whatnot. So it's like lightning fast. These are things that happen outside of we have no idea they're going on. They're outside of our conscious awareness. But yeah, exactly. I mean, nanoseconds.
Hmm. How does being a father yourself influence your approach to helping other dads? That's a good question. What did you learn with your two kids?
Oh man, I practice what I preach,
Mm-hmm.
and that serves to, I think, for me to like it's qualitative data to verify that I'm not just making stuff up, and that what I preach is useful and is replicable. But I could talk with other men about what it's like to be a dad. Like it's just there's this sense of knowing. I don't know. There's just like getting it.
It's like a special club.
Yeah, I think so. It's very special, and even if that person's not acting that way, like my client or whoever's not acting in a way that they're proud of,
Mm-hmm.
they still feel it. I
Yep.
think they still have a deep longing, I believe, this deep instinct to connect with their kids. Maybe it's buried under mounds of stuff, but it's there. And so when you talk in that way, they're like, yeah, I do feel that way. And it sucks that I can't be with my kids, or I'm not living up to what I want as far as being a dad. Like my behaviors don't match what I truly want inside. It sucks. And they know that, and they feel it still. It's still there.
Yeah, my deal was my co-parenting situation. We did week on, week off and changed, but it was a cluster. And matter of fact, it was a cluster until they grew up. And I had to go from the standpoint that I love my kids more than I hated my ex.
Hmm.
And that's what got me through, something simple like that. Let's
Yeah,
talk about,
it's
before we
powerful.
go, the two buzzwords of 2025, narcissism and what's the other word?
You nailed it, dude.
Uh, God, there's another one. Hello, folks.
Gaslighting.
Gaslighting. Thank you.
Oh my God, I guessed it.
Yep, there you go.
I didn't guess it. I know. I know
Yeah,
exactly what you're
yeah.
talking about.
Gaslighting is just like a long lie. That's all it is. They took the word lie and they said, "Hey, let's give it a special name."
Let's just drag it out a little bit. No, so all right, let's try and parse this out. These are definitely buzzwords, wildly overused. I think honestly, man, all these like the mental health words, they get overused until they're meaningless.
Mm-hmm.
ADHD, I don't even know what the heck that means. I know what the DSM, I know what the mental health Bible, I know what that says. The way people use it out in the wild, I have no idea what they're talking about anymore. It makes no sense. Same thing with gaslighting, same thing with narcissism. It seems like people use these words, they use gaslighting to mean lie, but that it's more, there's more depth to it than that. Gaslighting is not just lying, but it's not just tricking someone. It's getting them to question their own sanity in a sense.
Yeah.
Getting them to question of like, well, did that actually happen? Or like, you know what I mean? It's not like a lie. It's not just a disagreement. It's fundamentally getting them to like really deeply question, like,
In reality.
yeah, exactly. It's a much deeper and
Yeah.
more extensive lie, you could say, I guess, but it really is questioning their foothold in reality. Like it's a hell of a thing. So it's very much overused, and I think has definitely watered down the meaning of the word. Narcissism, same thing. I don't feel like I'm not going to claim I have expertise in narcissism, but I think people use the word to mean like my husband or my spouse or whatever is a jerk, or they're kind of full of themselves. But no, a narcissist is like the world's all about them. They bend the world to fit. And I'm not an expert in narcissism again, but it's like I did do an episode. I did a deep dive on episode on that, but it's been a while.
But I'm not an expert.
No, but that one episode, I went to the DSM. I looked
Did
at
you?
it and I kind of studied. Yeah, I went really
I'll have to
deep in that
watch that
episode.
episode for sure.
Yeah, but it's, as I understand it, someone who's a true narcissist, they contort everything to be about them. They can also kind of become what somebody else wants of them, so that it becomes about them. That's the best I can explain it. I don't think I can do better off the cuff right now, sadly.
All
But
right.
it is wildly overused.
Well, Justin, this has been interesting. This has been fun, man. This is you gotta go out of the box. My men have about a half-hour attention span, so it's been about 36. Let the people know out there where to find you on the internet.
Stucknotbroken.com. That's really, everything's there. So stucknotbroken.com, the podcast, and all my other offerings are there. I would recommend just hang out with me on the podcast. If these things interest you, I go really in depth into them on the podcast. Stuck Not Broken.
And what's the one thing you wanted to impart in closing?
Man, that's a good question. Pay attention. Pay attention to how you feel. Don't ignore it. Don't mask it. I know it's not that easy, but as best you can, even for 30 seconds, even for a minute a day. Like, be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself about how you feel. If you feel sad, it's okay to say I feel sad, at least to yourself. If you feel dread about the future, if you feel terrified about your financial life, it's okay to say I feel blank. And you don't got to say it out loud. You don't got to tell anybody else, but just be honest with yourself and tiptoe into your feelings if you can.
All right, that's a mic drop with Justin, man. I appreciate it, Justin, even though you're a 49er fan. But we're not going to talk about that.
David, I appreciate you having me on, man. Thank you for the laugh. Dang it.
Oh, you got to have fun.
No, thank you for the 2 summers worth of absolute misery and sorrow that I still feel, but I felt them pretty intensely for at least a couple summers.
You kind of got back up at the last Super Bowl when my guys were out at the craps table too long the night before. So
is that what happened? I was wondering, honestly, what happened there?
I couldn't even tell you.
Yeah.
All right, Justin, I'll let you go, but don't go anywhere. I'm going to sign off, but thank you very much for your time. But don't.
All right, man. Thanks again.